2,000 years ago, a Roman emperor wrote a private journal that he never meant for you to read. There is a passage from Seneca that says, simply, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." When you cannot change a circumstance, you can still change your relationship to it. This is not a clever trick. It is the central insight of the entire Stoic project. The man in the prison cell and the man at the banquet are doing the same work, choosing what they will make of their portion. The portion itself is not the point. What you make of it is. If you watch carefully, you will see that the world conspires to take your attention. It wants you to be angry and afraid and envious and certain of your importance. None of these are accidents. They are profitable. The Stoic does not rage against this, that too would be giving the world a tax it has not earned. The Stoic simply chooses, each morning, to take his attention back. There is a temptation, when you read words like these, to treat them as inspiration. Words to be felt, then forgotten. But the Stoics did not write to inspire. They wrote to instruct. They believed that virtue was a craft, not a feeling, that acceptance of what you cannot control was something you practiced, the way a stonecutter practiced his chisel. Small, deliberate, repeated. It helps sometimes to remember scale. You are one person on one planet, in one moment of a history that stretches behind you for tens of thousands of years and ahead of you for who knows how long. The thing that is bothering you tonight, the slight, the unanswered message, the small humiliation, will not be remembered by anyone, including yourself, in a year. This is not nihilism. It is perspective. The Stoics called it the view from above. There is a particular kind of suffering that comes from believing you are alone with your difficulty. The Stoics knew this suffering well, and they wrote against it with a tenderness that modern readers sometimes miss. Seneca did not write to a perfected reader. Seneca wrote to the man at his worst, the one who has just lost his temper or his courage or his way. To that reader, the message was always the same. Begin again. There is a phrase Epictetus repeated over and over in the schoolroom in Nicopolis where he taught virtue is a habit. Not a gift, not a mood, a habit. Built one small refusal at a time. The man who can sit with a difficult feeling for 30 seconds today can sit with it for a minute tomorrow. The work is unremarkable. It is also the whole work. Watch sometimes how a small humiliation lingers in you for hours. Watch how a single critical word from someone you do not even respect can ruin an evening. This is the place where the Stoics did their hardest work. Not in grand crises, those are easy in a strange way. In the small frictions, in the petty ones, the ones that should not matter but do. There is a small and surprising freedom available to anyone willing to stop. Stop arguing with what has already happened. Stop rehearsing what someone said. Stop counting the ways you were treated badly. None of that requires forgiveness. That is a separate, larger question. It only requires the decision to put the thing down, to set it down, as you would set down a stone you have carried too far. There is, beneath all of this, a question the Stoics return to in every text, in every translation, in every century. What is a man for? Not what does he want, not what does he fear. What is he for? The answer, in their view, was unflinching. A man is for becoming what he is capable of being. Nothing else. Not the applause, not the fortune, not the bitterness of having been wronged. Only the slow, daily becoming. The Stoics held that a life well lived is not measured by its length, nor by its comforts, nor even by what was accomplished within it. It is measured by the alignment between what you said you valued and what you did. That gap between word and deed is where character lives, or fails to. Tonight, you might consider gently where that gap is widest in your own life. Not to punish yourself. To know. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by sycophants and assassins, kept returning in his journals to a single phrase. The obstacle is the way. Not, the obstacle is in the way. The obstacle is the way. What is blocking you is what you are here to learn. What you find unbearable is what is asking to be born. This reframe is small, It is also, perhaps, the largest reframe a mind can perform. There is an exercise that Epictetus gave his students that you can do tonight in the next 10 minutes. List the things you have lost in the last year: opportunities, relationships, money, time, certainty. Then ask of each one, was this ever truly mine? Or was it on loan, the way the harvest is on loan from the field? You will find, if you are honest, that almost nothing was truly yours. And in this loss, paradoxically, there is freedom. Seneca wrote that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Read that line again. The fear of the call you have not yet made. The dread of the conversation that has not yet happened. The shame that has not yet been confirmed. Almost everything that hurts you tonight is happening in a place that does not exist. The future you have not lived, the past you cannot change. The practice of letting go begins with the recognition of this. There is no shame in beginning again. The Stoics, if they could speak to you now, would not be impressed by your record. They would not care how many times you failed before. They would ask only one thing: are you, in this moment, willing to begin? That is the entire test. And it is, blessedly, a test that resets every morning. Notice what the Stoics did not do. They did not try to silence the storm. They did not pretend the world was easier than it is. They named the difficulty plainly: acceptance of what you cannot control, the wisdom of release, the slow erosion of attention. And then they did the harder thing. They turned inward, not to escape, but to find the one place where their power was still real. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius about amor fati in a letter that you can still read today, almost 2,000 years later. He did not promise transcendence. He did not say the work would be easy. He said, I am still learning. Even at the end of my life, I am still learning. Take this as a comfort. The men we look up to were not finished. They were practicing. There is a posture the Stoics taught their students to hold when life pressed in hard. They called it patientia, patience, but stronger. Not the patience of waiting for something better. The patience of standing in this moment with this difficulty and refusing to look away. It is closer to courage than to virtue. And like courage, it can only be practiced when it is hardest. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations at night, in a tent on campaign, surrounded by men who would betray him, by an empire that was beginning to fail. He had every right to be bitter. He chose, instead, to write a letter to himself. A letter that said, in 100 different ways, the same quiet thing. The only thing I can govern is what I do with this moment. Consider how much of your day is spent reacting. A message arrives and your mood shifts. A small look from a stranger and your shoulders tense. The Stoic noticed this and named it. Between every event and your response, there is a space. The space is yours. The size of that space and what you do inside it is the entire measure of the practice of letting go. Consider the man who has just been criticized. The blood rises in his face. His mouth opens before his mind has formed a thought. The Stoic, in this moment, does not pretend he feels nothing. He pauses. He notices the heat, and he asks the only question that matters. Is this in my power? Not what was said. That is gone. Not what was meant. That belongs to the speaker. Only what I do now. Only that. There is no audience for this work but yourself. Begin tonight. Let tomorrow find you a little stronger, a little stiller, a little more your own.